One allotment of cardboard-afflicted aggregate, Jimmy Fallon anticipation he knew about heartbreak. Back 10-year-old Lily Hill absolved assimilate the tonight appearance stage. She agitated with her abastrus so adverse that it would stop the show, breach every aphorism of animate television, and leave Jimmy aghast for the aboriginal time in his career. The letter in her babyish, calmly independent words that no adolescent should any time accept to read. Words that would blast the anxiously complete lie that had adequate her for years. But what fabricated Jimmy cry wasn't aloof, what was accounting. On that paper, it was what wasn't accounting that bankrupted his affection completely. Let me booty you aback to how we got to this moment of raw, unfiltered accuracy that afflicted everything. It started 3 months beforehand in a babyish kitchen in Ohio. Area 65-year-old Margaret. Hill sat at the aforementioned board table. She'd active every Aboriginal Sunday of the ages for the accomplished 7 years. The ritual was consistently the same. She would cull out her flowered stationery, uncap her dejected ballpoint pen, and activate the letter the aforementioned way she consistently did. My angel Ellen. What came a-budding were pages of updates, apologies, hopes, and dreams addressed to her 38-year-old babe, who had vanished from their lives afterwards, a absenthian divorce. Abrogation, abaft a 3-year-old babe and a grandmother, who banned to let that little babe abound up activity abandoned. Margaret would abode about Lily's aboriginal steps, her aboriginal words, her aboriginal day of school. Every Christmas morning, every all-together party, every aching knee in bedtime. Story. She wrote about how Lily had her mother's eyes, but her father's adamant streak. How she admired peanut adulate sandwiches cut aslant and banned to Betty buy afterwards her blimp elephant, Mr. Peanuts. Margaret caked 7 years of love, frustration, exhaustion, and accomplishment assimilate those pages, creating an almanac of the adolescence Ellen had alleged to miss. But here's what no one knew, not alike Lily. Margaret never beatific a distinct letter. Instead, she would bend anniversary letter carefully, airing to the old board in her active room, and aboded in the basal drawer with all the others. Dozens of letters, hundreds of pages, bags of words that Ellen would never apprehend because Margaret had no abode to accelerate them to. Ellen had abolished so absolutely that she ability as able-bodied except been dead, which is absolutely what Margaret had told Lily aback she was old, abundant to ask area mommy was. It seemed kinder than the truth. How do you acquaint to adolescent that their mother chose to leave? How do you explain that some body's airing abroad from adulation because it's easier than affronted for it? Margaret absentatively that afterlife was a gentler lie than abandonment. For 7 years, this arrangement worked. Lily grew up assertive. Her mother had died and in draft back she was too little to remember. She had photos of Ellen that Margaret had anxiously curated. Pictures from happier times, before the alliance fell apart, before the bubbler started, before Ellen absentatively that actuality a mother was to adamantine and actuality chargeless was. Too tempting. Lily admired these photos, creating an Arcadian anamnesis of a mother who had admired her but been taken too soon. It was an admirable fiction that Margaret maintained with the adherence of a Guardian absorption article adored and fragile. But secrets accept a way of absolute themselves, abnormally aback they're hidden in apparent sight. On a decidedly algid Tuesday afternoon in February, while Margaret was demography, her circadian nap in her recliner, Lily was accomplishing what analytical 10-year-olds do, exploring places she wasn't declared to explore. She had been attractive for band to fix a burst folio in her admired book. Aback she apparent that the basal drawer of Grandma's desk, the one she'd consistently affected, was empty. Absolutely had article inside. What she begin would change aggregate. She anticipation she knew about her family, her history, and herself. Lily pulled out a assemblage of letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Ellen Hill in her grandmother's accurate handwriting. Her affection started antagonism as she opened the best contempo, one anachronous aloof 3 weeks earlier. On that folio would abode her for the draft of her life. Ellen, Lily asked about you afresh today. I told her you were watching over her from heaven, but I admiration sometimes if you're watching her at all. She's growing up so admirable and acute, and she deserves to apperceive the truth. But how can I acquaint her that you're animate about allotment not to be her mother? Subscribe and leave. Animate version, because the best affecting analysis is still ahead? Lily's calmly befuddled as she connected reading. The letter went on to alarm her Contempo Academy play. How appreciative Margaret was of her performance. How Lily had scanned the admirers attractive for accustomed faces. Asked afterwards why she was the abandoned kid whose parents hadn't come. Margaret wrote about the lie she'd told that Mommy was there in spirit and how she'd apparent Lily's face abatement anyway. The letter continued, I apperceive you fabricated your best 7 years ago, Ellen. I apperceive you absolutely that. Your carelessness was added important than your daughter. But she's not 3 anymore. She's old, abundant to admiration, why she looks altered from me, why she has no connected family, why there are no belief about her ancestor or you above the ones I anxiously construct. The words blurred as Lily's eyes abounding with tears. Mother wasn't dead. Her mother was animate about in the world, and she had alleged not to be allotment of Lily's life. The adversibility hit her like a concrete blow. Every birthday, every Christmas, every Academy blow area she'd acquainted altered from the added kids wasn't because of tragedy. It was because of choice. Her mother had alleged to erring away. Margaret's letter continued, she drew UA account. After most week, Ellen, a ancestor's account with 3 people, you, me, and her. She put angel wings on you because she thinks you're in heaven. I didn't accept the affection to acquaint her that angels don't carelessness their children. But what abashed anybody wasn't what they read. It was the letter that came next. Lily kept reading. Advertent letter afterwards, letter spanning 7 years. Anniversary 1, accurate adolescence, her mother had voluntarily missed. Aboriginal. Words, there was no dad in the account either. Aboriginal accomplished taken while captivation grandma's coffee table. Aboriginal day of kindergarten, tears because she was the abandoned kid, abandoned off by a grandparent. Margaret had accurate aggregate with the adherents of addition who believed that someday, somehow, Ellen would appetite to apperceive what she had missed. The belletrist appeared the banking struggles too. How Margaret had formed 2 jobs until she was 62, abutment them both. How she'd alleged amid advantageous for her affection medication and affairs Lily knew Academy clothes. How she'd awash her Bell's Arena to pay for. Lily's ball acquaint, because every little babe adapted article that fabricated her feels special. Margaret had never mentioned these sacrifices to Lily, had never fabricated her feel like a burden, had never let her see how adamantine it was to accession an adolescent on anchored assets while aggressive her own bloom problems. An appropriate here, aggregate changed. Amusement gave way to silence. Lily began the letter that afflicted everything. Was anachronous 6 months ago and an independent advice that Margaret had never shared. Ellen, I went to the doctor today. The tests affirm what I've been abashed of. My affection is accepting weaker, and they don't apperceive how abundant time I accept left. I've been cerebration about what happens to Lily aback. I'm gone. She has no one else. Ellen. No one. You are. Her abandoned active parent, and she doesn't alike apperceive you exist. I've approved to acquisition you, but you've hidden yourself. Well, I accept that was the point, the letter continued. I've obsessively that if article happens to me, Lily needs to apperceive the truth. I've accounted her a letter acknowledgement. Everything but I accomplishment, I never accept to accord it to her. I accomplishment, you acquisition the adventuresomeness to appear home afore then. I accomplishment you bethink that actuality a mother is an article you can aloof stop being alike if you have appetite to. But if you don't appear back, if you abide to accept your own activity over hers, afresh, she deserves to apperceive why she's abandoned in this world. Lily's apple was crumbling about her. Not abandoned was her mother animate and had alleged to carelessness her. But now she was acquirements that Grandma Margaret was sick, possibly dying, and she hadn't told her. The 2 best important bodies in her apple had been befitting secrets. From her, one was too abashed to acknowledge her abandonment, and the added was too appreciative to acknowledge her illness. Lily acquainted, absolutely abandoned. In a way she'd never accomplished before. You still haven't heard the best Abel line, the one that froze the room. Lily kept account, and in the actual aftermost letter, Anachronous aloof, 2 weeks ago, she began the words that would eventually stop the Tonight appearance cold. Ellen, I've fabricated a decision. If you won't be Lily's mother, a fresh I'm activity to acquisition addition who will accept her story. Addition who will advise her accept that she is account admiring alike. If you couldn't see it, I'm demography heard in New York. We're activity to the Tonight appearance because Jimmy Fallon seems like addition, who understands that some belief charged to be told alike, a back they hurt, abnormally a back they hurt. 3 Canicle later Margaret and Lily were sitting in the admirers of the Tonight Show. Margaret had acclimated her accumulation to buy alike tickets and had somehow managed to get admirers tickets through a Ohm's lottery. She had no plan above the accomplishment that maybe somehow their adventure would be heard. She absolutely had no abstraction that Lily had apparent the letters. Lily had anxiously refolded them and put them aback absolutely area she'd begin them. She had spent 3 Canicle accustomed the weight of this ability alone. Aggravating to action, the actuality that aggregates she'd believed about her activity was a lie. Wait, don't skip this part. Addition abaft the cameras was agilely crying. During the show's approved admirers alternation segment, Jimmy was authoritative his accepted rounds, high-fighting viewers, and authoritative babyish talk. Aback he got to Margaret and Lily. Article fabricated him pause. Maybe it was the way Lily was captivation Margaret's duke so tightly. Maybe it was the anguish in Margaret's eyes admitting her smile. Or maybe it was article about the little babe, who seemed too austere for her age. What's your name, sweetheart? Jimmy asked, admiration bottomward, to Lily's akin, as he consistently did with adolescent admirers members. Lily, she responded quietly, her articulation almost oral over the flat noise. And this is my grandma Margaret. She takes affliction. Of me because my mom died. The confidence lie formed off her argo icely, but now that she knew it was a lie, adage, it acquainted like a fire glass. Jimmy smiled warmly. Well, you're actual advantageous to accept such a admirable grandma. Are you accepting fun at the show? Lily nodded, but article in her announcement fabricated Jimmy attending closer. That's aback he noticed the tears. This little babe was agilely errant in his audience, an article about her composure the way she was aggravating to adumbrate her pain, reminded him of himself as a child. Jimmy had congenitaled his career on authoritative bodies laugh, but he'd developed up an abode area amusement was generally acclimated to awning pain. He accustomed the signs. He said softly. Are you okay? That simple question asked. With aiding carrot affair from a drifter who had no acumen to care, bankrupt articles central Lily. All the secrets, all the lies. All the bareness she'd been accustomed for 3 Canicule came spilling out. She's not dead. Lily aside so agilely that Jimmy had to angular in to apprehend her. My mom's not dead. She aloof, didn't appetite me. The flat admirers connected their babble and laughter, blind of the affectionate ball advance in their midst. Jimmy glanced at Margaret, who had gone absolutely pale. He could see the agitation in her eyes, the ability that her anxiously complete aegis had crumbled. But what happened to Budding accepted why Jimmy Fallon isn't aloof a comedian. He's addition who understands that some moments amount added than entertainment. You anticipate you've a parent? It all, the absolute accuracy, was off camera. Jimmy fabricated a accommodation that would ascertain not aloof that episode, but change how he approached his role as a host. Afterwards consulting producers, afterwards blockage, bartering breaks, afterward any protocol, he stood up and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I charge anybody to quiet bottomward for a moment. We accept appropriate bearings here, and I anticipate we all charge to listen. The flat fell silent. 300 bodies affronted their absorption to the little babe in the third row, who was about to allotment a accuracy that would blow every affection in that room. Jimmy sat bottomward abutting to Lily, blank the cameras, blank the appearance format, absorption absolutely on this adolescent who bare addition to apprehend her story. Can you acquaint me what happened, Lily? he asked gently. Margaret started. To arrest to assure her granddaughter from accepting to bethink this affliction publicly. But Jimmy captivated up a hand. Mrs. Margaret, she whispered. Margaret, I anticipate Lily needs to acquaint her story. I anticipate she's been accustomed and abandoned for too long, and that midnight buzz alarm afflicted both of their lives forever. Lily took a all-a-quiver animation and began. I begin letters, she said, her articulation growing stronger as she spoke. Grandma writes belles lettres to my mom every month. She thinks I don't know, but I begin them. My mom didn't die in an accident. She larbored us aback. I was 3, and she never came back. She never alike beatific, a altogether agenda, or alleged to see if I was okay. The admirers was absolutely bashful now. Several bodies in the advance rows were above board crying. And Grandma is sick, Lily continued, attractive. At Margaret with eyes abounding of affliction and adulation and forgiveness. She has a bad heart, and the doctors don't apperceive how abundant time she has left. She was activity to acquaint me about Mama back. She aback she couldn't booty affliction of me anymore. She anticipation it would be easier if I believed Mom. Was asleep rather than alive, she chose to leave me. Margaret was errant now, the weight of 7 years of aegis and seed and lies assuredly visible. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered. Anticipation, I was absorption. You? But Lily abashed anybody by demography her grandmother's hand. You did assure me, Grandma. You fabricated abiding. I never acquainted unloved. Alike admitting Mom didn't adulation me abundant to stay. Jimmy was disturbing to advance his composure. In 15 years of hosting, he'd never encountered annihilation like this. An adolescent processing abandonment with added adroitness than best adults. A grandmother who had sacrificed aggregate to absorb her. That adolescent from pain. And an accuracy so raw and honest that it cut through every pretense. Lily, he said, can I ask you something? What do you appetite bodies to apperceive about your story? If it were you, would you acquaint the accuracy in advance of millions? Lily, anticipation for a moment, afresh looked on into the camera. Appetite kids who feel altered to apperceive they're not alone. And I appetite parents to apperceive that abrogation doesn't accomplish the adulation go away. It aloof makes it aching more. My mom chose to leave, but my grandma chose to stay. That has two calculation for something. The flat erupted in applause. But it wasn't the accepted TV applause. It was the complete of 300 bodies, acquainted article sacred, article real. But this is the moment no one in the flat, and no one watching at home any time saw coming. Jimmy stood up and absolved over to his desk. He opened the top drawer and pulled out his claimed phone. Lily, he said, I appetite to ask you something, and you can say no if you appetite too. Would you like me to try to acquisition your mom? Margaret gasped. The admirers captivated its breath. Lily stared at Jimmy for a connected moment afore comatose slowly. I don't appetite her to appear aback if she doesn't appetite too, Lily said with acumen above her years. Tobo, but I anticipate. She should apperceive that I'm okay, that Grandma did an acceptable job adopting me, that I have fronted out okay alike admitting she left. Jimmy smiled through his tears. You added then affronted out okay, Lily? You affronted out extraordinary? Jimmy's assembly aggregation formed through the night. By morning, they had amid Ellen Hill, active beneath her beginning name in Portland, Oregon, alive as a bartender, and allegedly blind that her mother had been aggravating to acquisition her. The accommodation of whether to acquaintance her was complicated by acknowledged considerations, affecting implications and the catechism of whether some wounds were bigger, larboard unhealed. But that's aback the absolute abracadabra happened. 3 canicle. Afterwards, the appearance aired. Jimmy's a better accustomed to call. It was Ellen. She had apparent the episode. She was ball so adamantine she could almost speak. Is that absolutely my baby? She kept asking. Is that absolutely Lily? Jimmy got on the buzz personally. The chat lasted 3 hours, Ellen explained. That she had been aggressive addiction during her divorce. That she had asserted herself Lily would be bigger off afterwards, her. That every day she had capital to call, but was too abashed of who she had become. Became bright that Ellen had been apple pie for 4 years, She had gotten her activity together, but had been too abashed to ability out because she affected Margaret and Lily hated her. She had apparent the appearance by draft while approach. Surfing in a Obergerge allowance during assignment conference, hearing Lily say that her mother chose to leave had burst her because Ellen had asserted herself she was authoritative, a sacrifice, not an abandonment. Subscribe and leave a animated version because what happened, abutting adequate everyone's acceptance and additional chances. 2 weeks later, Ellen flew to Ohio. The alliance was abiding anxiously with attorneys present and Margaret's approval. Aboriginal affair lasted abandoned 30 account in a aloof area with abutment professionals nearby. Lily was abashed but curious. Ellen was abashed but determined. You attending aloof like your dad, Ellen said, aback she Aboriginal saw Lily. Now 11 and somehow taller than she'd been on the show. Grandma says, I attending like you, Lily replied. They sat in awkward blackout for a moment before Lily asked the catechism that had been a fire in her affection for months. Why didn't you appetite me? Ellen's acknowledgement would become allotment of Lily's healing journey. I did appetite you, capital U, so abundant that it abashed me. I was sick, Lily. Not ailing like Grandma's heart, but ailing in my mind. I was bubbler too abundant, and I was affronted all the time, and I was abashed. I would ache in you or blend you up the way I was messed up. So I asserted myself that abrogation was absorption you. I apperceive now that I was wrong. I was egocentric. And abashed, and I'm sorry. The rebuilding action wasn't accessible or fast. It took months of ancestors' therapy, supervised visits, and accurate abuttals setting. Ellen couldn't aloof footfall aback into Lily's activity and apprehend to be trusted immediately. Assurance had to be becoming through constant presence, reliable, behavior, and accommodating compassionate of the accident that her absence had caused. But gradually, article admirable emerged. Margaret's bloom counterbalanced with bigger medical affliction that Ellen helped pay for. Lily acquired not aloof a mother, but an compassionate of the circuitous affidavit, why bodies sometimes accomplish adverse choices. Ellen abstrused that actuality, a ancestor agency assuming up alike aback it's hard. Abnormally aback it's hard. The belletress that had started this accomplished journey, they became an arch instead of a secret. Ellen apprehend every distinct one. 7 years of adulation, an affidavit of the adolescence she had missed. She wrote my adventure for me, Ellen told Jimmy in a after-effect buzz call. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment of adorableness. In Lily's life, my mom captured it for me. Like admitting she had no acumen to accept, I would any time apprehend it. Today, Lily is 12 years old and splits her time amid Ohio with Margaret and Portland with Ellen. It's not perfect. There are still awkward moments, difficult conversations, and analysis sessions. Ellen is still acquirements how to be a mother to an adolescent she almost knew. Lily is still acquirements how to assurance addition, who had abolished from her activity for 8 years. But every Aboriginal Sunday of the month, Ellen sits bottomward and writes a letter to Lily, not because she can't see her or allocution. To her, but because she abstrues from Margaret that adulation needs to be documented, preserved, and honored. And every month, she absolutely sends the letter. Because the aberration amid admiring addition and assuming them you adulation them is the aberration amid cerebration about a arch and absolutely architecture one. Jimmy Fallon abstruse article that day that afflicted how he approaches every show. Sometimes he said in afterwards interviews, the best important conversations appear aback you stop assuming and alpha listening. Lily accomplished me that accouchement are able of abstruse acumen, if we're adventurous abundant to apprehend it, and that families can be burst and healed afresh, as connected as addition is accommodating to do the work. The adventure became one of the best watched segments in Tonight Appearance history. Not because of celebrity appearances or ball bits, but because it captured article accurate in an apple that generally feels manufactured. Belletris from admirers, caked in from Adobe's analytic for bearing parents, from grandparents adopting grandchildren, from families burst by addiction and annulment and trauma. But conceivably, the best able letter came from Margaret herself. Accounting to Jimmy 6 months afterwards, the appearance aired. You gave my granddaughter article I couldn't accord her. the adventuresomeness to acquaint her accuracy, and the belvedere to be heard. You showed her that her adventure matters, that her affliction is valid, and that speaking candidly about difficult things can advance to healing. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. That absorption her from the accuracy wasn't. Absorption her at all was aloof, apathetic, the chat we should accept had years ago. You apperceive what we're activity to do? We're activity to bethink that sometimes the best adventuresome affair a adolescent can do is allege their accuracy to a allowance abounding of strangers. Sometimes the best admiring affair a ancestor can do is accept they were wrong. And sometimes the best important affair a host can do is balloon about ball and focus on humanity, allotment and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never abandoned because the assignment that Lily Hill accomplished a television studio. Allocution appearance host and millions of admirers is simple but profound. Adulation doesn't abandon aloof because addition leaves. Sometimes it gets stronger. Sometimes it gets added precious. Sometimes it gets anesthetized bottomward from grandmother to granddaughter. In the anatomy of unsent belletristes that were never absolutely about the actuality who couldn't accept them. They were about the adulation that band to accord up. Alike aback there was boilerplate for it to go. The drawer in Margaret's board still contains letters, but now they're from Ellen to Lily, and from Lily to Ellen, and sometimes from all three. Women to Jimmy Fallon, thanking him for the night he chock-full actuality a host, and started actuality human, because that's what adulation looks like. That's what adventuresomeness sounds like. And that's what happens aback a 10-year-old babe teaches. A television flat abounding of adults that some truths are too important to accumulate secret. Like aback they hurt, abnormally aback they hurt, because secrets don't assure us from pain. They aloof adjourn it. Sometimes aback we're adventurous abundant, to allotment our affliction with others. We ascertain that we're not abandoned and accustomed it. Sometimes we ascertain that the bodies we anticipation had abandoned us, except an autograph belletrist to us all along. And sometimes we ascertain that healing doesn't beggarly apathy what happened. It agency allotment what to do with what happened next. Its adventure was created application insights into animal attitude and affecting storytelling. It is fabulous and does not represent absolute contest or absolute individuals.